Hello and welcome to season 3 of Star Wipes. My name's Jeff Greenberg. I'm the lead moderator here on Reddit on our editors. With me, as always, is my dear friend Michael Kammes. Hello, Michael.
Hello, Jeff. Good to see you again. Good to hear the dulcet tones of your voice again.
I appreciate that so much. It has been a little while since we've done one of these, and I think a lot of that, of course, is I'm gonna take always the responsibility, but it's life. Life happens, and life there's a lot of life that's happened, and I think instead of us necessarily talking about what's happened life-wise, I think it'll be way, way more interesting for us to get to the meat, get to the fun stuff. Um, but it's right now, the last today the last day of February?
Yes, it is.
Outstanding.
Which
So
means 5 weeks to NAB. It's
5
early
weeks
this year.
5 weeks to NAB, it's early. I'm sure we're both going to NAB. I'm super excited. I'm also excited to see doesn't, Phil see his shadow in a couple days or not? Isn't Groundhog Day coming up?
Well, there's Phil, and then there's a lot of Phils in the film industry. So I want to make sure we're talking about the right person, singular shadow.
We're talking about the groundhog. We're talking about the groundhog.
Puxatawny Phil?
That's good,
Uh,
yeah.
I don't recall. Did he see his shadow earlier this year?
I don't know. I don't know. I always thought that was I guess it's a February thing, not a March thing. I have no idea when Groundhog Day is, none whatsoever. It's not a holiday that I get a chance off. The kids come home and they talk about winter and shadows, and I guess that's good stuff. Um, yeah, NAB is coming up. There's a lot of things going on in the industry. The industry is always amazing. It's part of what our editors is about. We're now just like shy of 150,000 professionals or aspiring professionals, as I like to describe it. And I'm the guy who, for better or worse, and I'll get you off the screen for this. For better or worse, I'm the guy who pushes content off because I feel it's just aspiring or the person doesn't have enough history. A lot of the times I point them either at our sister subreddit, video editing, which is hobbyists, but our editors is something that uh, I, for better or worse, am spending time in pretty much daily in moderating and trying to keep the conversation alive and professional in what I consider one of the few places where you can actually have a back and forth asynchronous conversation that's searchable. Uh, it's my favorite place to hang out.
I think what's interesting, especially since you've been modding for so long, is kind of seeing what the air is. Meaning, each year you have a different crop of folks asking questions, wanting to learn either new things or how things are done. And it's interesting that if you track it over several period of several years, how it changes and morphs, and how quickly that's happened over the past few years has been really interesting because the things that you maybe a professional on, or things you've been doing, or the tasks you've been doing for years, have morphed so quickly that not only are you sharing information, but you're also lurking and learning the new stuff that maybe hasn't come across your desk just yet.
That's what Reddit that's the whole reason I started moderating on Reddit is because I realized that with my head down being busy professionally, I needed a way to magnify the industry in a way that I could easily digest and quickly digest for what's hot. And that's one of my favorite little Reddit tricks I teach people is you go up to the top and you can say, what's hot for the last week, for the last month? And suddenly, better or worse, the chum or the good stuff rises and the bad stuff falls. And that's Reddit for you. With that, we'll be doing an NAB special, I would say, within the next 2 weeks because 'cause we're gonna need to. One of the things, though, that I'm gonna just pepper early in here, at Post-Production World, I'm doing sort of a shared talk of more details about it, but basically, I'm gonna use the last year of Esca Pro as sort of an FAQ around the industry, just kinda
Mhm.
sharing that collective group wisdom, and I'm real excited to see where that goes. I'm excited to see you there, buy you a drink. Hopefully, I also will have something to announce about a Reddit meetup there because I think that's pretty important. Although the big one I was trying to plan something that would kind of be like the super meet. Looks like it's not going to happen, but maybe for the next calendar year. Uh, is there what is it? Where are we 5 weeks out or 6 weeks?
I think I want to say the 5th. Is that right? Is the 5th a Friday? I think I'll be there Friday through Wednesday. I think it's the 5th. But yeah, that's, yeah, 5 weeks.
I'll be there Friday through Thursday, and we'll, I'm sure, find ways for people to find us. We'll maybe see if we can record something in person. And with that being said, the general format of this has traditionally been we do some ask anything questions from the Ask a Pro thread. We then go into typically two short forms and two long forms, and then do a dopamine hit of something we're looking at. And we're going to kind of squash a little bit of that together. We're going to kind of draw it out to just have some fun with it, partially because both of us, well, we try to at least catch up once every couple weeks, and Reddit tends to be a big conversation. So with that, I'm going to go ahead here and I'm going to take us over. And so with that, Michael, we're going to go ahead here and take a look at Ask a Pro Weekly for February 17th, 2025. Um, by the way, we're looking at this here in what's called old Reddit. For those of you who don't know and you're looking on mobile, you should know that Reddit itself has this much nicer or much more easily to digest lots of information by just changing the www to old. There's some great tools out there. But we're looking at the Ask a Pro, and I felt this time, Michael, it might be really interesting for us to just kind of shoot through and pick some items to comment on. And I want to start with this top one from Camel Priest. I'm a recent graduate, not from one of the big ones, wanted to get in the editing world. How do I start? I don't care if it's editing for a film, commercial, show, freelance editor for streamers. I'm 28 and now getting my life together. I'm going to come on screen for that a second. Hey, Camel Priest, your life is together. We're all on a path, man. And so I just want you to hear that this idea that you're 28 and you feel things are undone, that's okay. You're not supposed, there's no direct path. There's no super, item that's meant for you to know what to do. I've done student short films. I've done my own animated short. What do I do? Fiverr. How do I sell myself? How do I charge clients? My biggest question for Camel Priest, Michael, where do they live? If
Of course. Obviously, we know that there are certain areas, at least in the United States, where you're going to get more jobs that are television or film oriented. There are other places where it's going to be very, shall we say, corporate based, right? Marketing communications. It could be somewhere overseas where the video editing realm is a lot larger of an industry. So yeah, it really depends on where you are because even with the internet bringing everyone closer, you still at some point need to press the flesh. There has to be, or at least right now, there has to be that way of interacting with people, especially if you're getting into film and television. That's still very much a who you know, et cetera, as opposed to other kind of nascent industries where you can meet online and still get a sense of someone and get hired that way.
1,000%. And in fact, I'm just going to nail out those key questions there. Where do I start? You start networking. Hopefully, you've done some level of internships, you've made friends with others, and you want to start watching where they go with their careers. Do they go to Fiverr? I'm going to go no. I'm going to say Fiverr, Upwork, those sort of things are a race to the bottom because having gotten some services from Fiverr, the first thing I'm looking at is how low can I go and maybe is it adequate for the
I think
record.
there's the other angle, and there have been some companies I've worked for that have said we've hired people from Fiverr, and I've proactively said, "Well, can I see what their account, what their bio looks like?" And what I find is that the bio that you put out there, if you're trying to catch everything, it's almost like jack of all trades, master of none. So if you're just keyword stuffing. And your bio is very disjointed. That's going to be a turnoff for me and a lot of folks I work with. If it's I do corporate videos, I do this, I do that, and it's written in a succinct, clear way. That's going to get me, as someone who may hire someone off Fiverr, much more interested in what you have than just a random string of consciousness and stuffing with keywords. Now, I completely understand this may be a generational thing, but that's kind of the caliber of folks I'm looking with who can if I'm expecting them to convey a message or a story in their editing, they gotta be able to do it via text, right? And if they can't do that, then how are they gonna be able to do that via video?
I'm going to go a step further, though. I see so many people come into our editors saying, well, I'm going to do some of that work for as little as possible or even free so I can get material. I can use it on my reel. Over on video editing, there are actually full projects, including groups like Edit Stock that will sell you material you can put on a reel. But the real problem with doing stuff on Fiverr is the group that's going to use Fiverr as their place to get video editing done extraordinarily cheap for somebody who's like near to $0, doing it for near to free. Well, they're going to show up with production assets that are of that quality, meaning it's going to be poorly lit, it's going to be poor sound, it's going to be poorly organized, and what they're gonna end up with is terrible material for that potential reel. So Camel Priest is saying, how do I sell myself? I would start with every living network that I have. That'd be LinkedIn, Facebook, that'd be even to a degree Reddit, and go, not how can you give me a job, but hey, is there a way can I help? Are there ways you're interested in some of what I do? Because I'm trying to be more professional with that umbrella that somebody's going to guide you into that space because this poor person is going to get launched into starting a business, charging money, client handling, all things that, frankly, they're underskilled for. And that is answered by that one element right there. How much should I charge clients? Um, we have a rejection reason built into the subreddit of what should I charge? Because we can't tell you. What we can tell you, because it may have to do with your cost of living where you are, you have to charge so much more in New York City than you do in near where I live, just, deep into Delaware. What I tell people is whatever your actionable day rate is and figure out how many days you would take. Don't you're not qualified to make a flat price quoting. What would you add to any of that or beyond just, yeah,
No, you're completely right. I think one of the things we see, when this question comes up from, aspiring or up and coming editors is that no contract was signed, no milestones were signed, no timeline, no pun intended, was agreed upon. And when you don't set those boundaries, often there are folks who may not be familiar with how editors work and how long things take. They will, quite often abuse that, and not in a malicious way, but in a, "What? You are an editor, and I'm asking you to make changes. Why can't you make 10 changes and have 10 rounds of changes?" There has to be you have to be set up to handle that, and by front loading and setting those expectations, not only does that limit your exposure, but it also says, "I know what I'm doing, and I'm making sure I don't get taken advantage of because I'm seasoned." I mean, that's the way to kinda spin it. I'm putting these rules in place so I don't get taken advantage of, and so I'm serious. So that
I think
always has to be done.
it's very much service oriented, and you go to your mechanic and you go, "We need to change the oil." That's a much smaller, much more easily estimatable job than, "I need my engine rebuilt." And so much of post-production is you're building an engine that it isn't necessarily straightforward unless this week's was exactly like last week's. And with that, I'm gonna move us forward down the thread a little bit. I'm sadly gonna skip see where these opponent what are the current gaps in post-production resource scheduling software, because I wanna get to Mozzarella Mirror's question. But before I do, Michael, do you know much about post-production resource scheduling software? Because I don't. I mean, like, I'm gonna click on that link and I'm gonna learn about it.
It used to be a very, specialty-based niche tool. I mean, Farmer's Wife has been around for quite a bit. We're now seeing folks use things like Airtable, Monday to some extent, for the newer, kind of smaller boutique, facilities or teams of, groups of editors. And it's much like the rest of the industry. It's kind of a race to zero and what tool can I use, and can it be all browser-based, right? A lot of these legacy tools only worked on Windows, were their own applications, and it kinda made it an island, but, Monday and Airtable are some of the more common ones I've been seeing as of late.
Since we were talking about pricing, I wanna just bring up there that Mozzarella Mirror one, which is I'm trying to quote somebody, but I don't have a ton of experience with this project. Anybody guessing how many days a job like this will take? And my answer would always be the same. I don't know how long this will take until I see all the pieces of this puzzle. But let's negotiate a fee and let's build a statement of work. So if something is way outside of what I'm expecting and way outside of what you're expecting, we can have that conversation before heavy work has started and we can part without anybody being angry. And, you know, they put in a really nice little piece here at, oh, actually, I don't say they do. I should say the wonderful, the amazing, the my hero in this thread, Tiki Thunder, who I spoke to last week briefly. Tiki brings up the it's really impossible to say, depends on the source and quality. If I'm going to do a reasonable job for a long form podcast, I'm budgeting 3 times the length of the recording. So he's guessing 2-ish sort of days of work. Tiki knocks it out of the park across this thread. But um, this is, always the struggle is how much time versus how much work versus what's coming in. And it's never a straightforward answer beyond where you live.
And it's gonna get even more convoluted, now that we're looking at introducing, not generative AI, but, analytical AI. Some folks incorrectly call it utility AI. Once these kind of tools start making their way into Adobe and Avid and other apps, it's gonna be quicker to get to that rough cut to or let me qualify that a little bit. It's gonna be quicker to get to the assembly edit or radio edit for some of you folks out there. It'll be quicker to get to that, so it will cut down the time that you're spending doing the logging, and those kinds of things. So that will start to contract. So I would do a couple of these projects, kind of feel what your multiplier is. Like, right, for every finished minute, for every finished edit, I had to spend 2 hours. Okay, that's kind of your baseline for a talking head podcast. Then when you start introducing things like AI, okay, now it's only taking me an hour and a half per minute. Now it's only taking me an hour per minute. And once you start getting that down, you kind of have a feeling when you start taking calls and emails from potential clients to know, well, I normally charge 1.5 an hour multiplier to 2.5 times. So at least there's some barometer or kind of area that you could potentially bill, and the client, it wouldn't be a surprise to the client.
I think those are dead on. To repeat this theme and repeat Tiki Thunder's name, take a look at Eastern Homework 140. I'm trying to make ends meet, and I found out about video editing not being not that bad money wise. Yeah. Huh. Anyway, um,
It's
how much?
hey, you know
Oh,
what? You can
hold on one
save
sec.
money.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, you can. Give me 1 second. How much is experience is needed? Is resolve good enough? Now, before you go and answer that, at the bottom of this thread is the following, a must read if you're thinking of breaking in. If you're looking to start this as a side hustle, the industry is rough. It's super easy to get taken advantage of. I work for someone else. There is no magical, mythical place where all the jobs are. And I have two sets of threads for them to. Is maybe the superpower of the future reading, Michael? Is-
No, it's having AI summarize for you,
it could be. Well,
giving
analytics.
you that.
Yeah. I think that, the answer to is Resolve good enough? Resolve is great. It's an editing tool. iMovie is great. If your client's happy, nobody cares. It all changes if you want to work with others.
Something I'll throw up to this person who was saying, "It looks like a good way to make money, and I'm pretty good at it." If you get into post-production editing because you wanna tell a story and you're enamored, rightly so, with film and television, yes, that can pay well. Are there jobs? No. If you are okay to edit and you're like, "I'll do corporate video, I'll take an interview with a CEO and cut it down and send it to all the stores." Yeah, there's plenty of jobs out there for that, but it's vastly different and may not be as fulfilling for you as a creative. If you're doing it because it pays the bills and you just like working in the software, you're gonna have a much easier time finding a job outside of media and entertainment, um, uh, to pay your bills. But, like I said, if you're trying to get into film and television and kind of the elevated creative forms of post-production, it's a really rough time right now, and I'd probably focus on another area. at least for the at least for the foreseeable future, until the pendulum swings and our industry comes back to some extent.
I'll point this out, because I literally we had somebody in replacing our smoke detectors in our house. They were over 10 years old. They were more than that. I'm glad we didn't have a fire, right?
The
Um,
people who replaced it were over
yeah,
10 years old?
that's
Because
right.
that's good.
That's
That's good to make sure.
that is good. Well, I was having a conversation because he had a little tech knowledge, and I was trying to explain to him a little bit about what I do, and I said, you know how when you put on a plate to the outlets, you turn that screw vertically, and you can kind of know, like maybe if the homeowner has them all vertical, maybe a professional did it, but if they're all over the place, you know that a professional didn't do it because the habits aren't good. I explained to him I could look at how somebody has their media folder organized or how their computer is, and I can tell in like 5 seconds if they're behaving in a professional environment that works well with others. And right, this leads us into, this nice item that again, Tiki Thunder being amazing, Vegathron. How do I know if I'm ready to edit for other people? Do I have the skills to start doing gigs? And if not, what should I do to get prepared? And Tiki goes, actual editing's a third of the job, a third of it's client management, and a third of it's self promotion. That means 66% of the job isn't the actual working with the piece of software. And I think that's got such a truism to it. The easiest part in some ways is pressing the buttons.
The I Zach Arnold, who does Cobra Kai and has Burn Notice and cut a ton of things. I brought up the term soft skills, and he goes, "I hate those skills. I hate those skills. I hate calling it that. Pardon me." Um, but that is the main concept here, which is if you're a creative and you're trying to take someone's vision who may speak a different language, who may not have the experience of the industry, and then you coming from a different background, you may not intrinsically understand exactly what they're trying to explain to you as a creative in what you want the story to be. And I find that more often than not, it's that disconnect. If you can connect with someone who you understand what they when they say, I need that scene feels really orange to me. Can it be more blue? They're not talking color. They're talking about the mood. They're talking about the emotion it evokes. If you can understand that, you're going to go much further than just reading text and saying, "Oh, they want this more blue. Okay, I'll just change the color." No, they're speaking to something different.
So many director editorial relationships that last over time is because of that inside language. And a lot of the time, working with a client, especially working with a client long term, is being able to understand that nuance of descriptive emotional feel that is not what shot goes next. And that's a very hard quantifiable item. And, just like in relationships, you're not in sync with everybody. And sometimes it's not in sync with that client, which is always a little bit of a pain point. And, again, I'm going to say, person asks, like, should I be using a particular piece of software? And that leads us to this one from Ace Kukurin, which is I'm curious about what software is used. I get Adobe has collaboration. I understand why Resolve is a study. What does Media Composer has? And again, my friend Tiki does his great job. Tiki does that great job of saying it comes down to two things. Avid can handle massive amounts of footage, blah, blah, blah. Um, and then some guy, Greeny's Mac, weighs in. Uh, what do they lack? Take a moment and just search editors. If you just took a time and searched here a little bit, you could see what some of Avid's nuances are, some of Premiere's stuff. That's why it's called a standard, and there's some reasons spinning these things up are a pain in the ass. It's a known quantity to be able to fire somebody who's using Avid and replace them with somebody else. But for me, the strongest item is this 5 thing series, The Truth About Video Editing Software in Hollywood with a 7-year update. Um, and I'm grossly promoting that anybody watching this podcast should absolutely watch Michael, your piece on this, because it is such a laser of where the industry is as far as professional film and television production.
I almost dislike making these episodes because it almost feels disingenuous because that's what you're gonna get clicks on, right? Like the concept itself is clickbait. But when I see posts like this on Reddit, I want to be like, yes, yes, there are videos on this, and the creator economy has a very good insight into what the creator economy does, but there's not a great insight into what the other parts of the industry are, right? Whether it's corporate America or whether it's film and television. And luckily, I'm in a position where I get to have my fingers in all those pies. So thank you for bringing this episode up. I examined it well, now 8 years ago. I then did a refresh last year, and it goes into the three biggies. What is used where, what kind of projects are cut on them, how long it's taken them to get to this level, what to look out for. It's just it's all killer, no filler, and I highly recommend you check it out.
I would say all the 5 Things series is all cover, no filler. Um, I'm gonna touch on the next one and punt it downhill, and you'll understand why when I do it. Uh, Goonie Gully goes, "Should I worry about AI taking my job?" I'm going to just go to the quick answer, "No, no." It wasn't work you were gonna get anyway, but AI is not at that spot where it does anything. Have you read ChatGPT writing text? You can spot it, smell it a mile away. We're
I'd like to bring up, and
Yeah.
folks who aren't familiar with, HPA, the Hollywood Professional Association. The HPA, is a group of professional individuals in the, Hollywood industry and sometimes outside of Hollywood. But it is all the C-levels, C-level suite, all the engineers, all the people that make the standards, members of SMPTE, all the VPs, of technology and engineering. We all gather for HPA Tech Retreat once a year, for about 8 or 900 people. And the reason I bring it up is this is the cream of the crop. And we go through presentations and people present what's happened in the past year and what studios are doing. And there was a great slide. I'll see if I can get it to Rachel to put in. That slide showed how AI was going to be used in the future, including this year, 2025. And what I loved about it is it said AI tool, human intervention, AI tool, human intervention. At every step that listed AI, there was always a human component to refine and fix or start over that process. And, I know some folks out there probably think there's this think tank of software folks that are like, yes, yes, we're going to create AI and put everyone out of a job. No, these AI tools are meant to have human interaction. Otherwise, why would you make the editing software? Why would Premiere make Premiere if they were just going to automate everything out of it and get the human element out of there? So, um, AI is here. AI is going to be more and more in the edit suite. It's not going to take your job. It's going to get you to various milestones quicker. That assembly won't take 5 hours. It may take 3 hours. It still needs human intervention. So learn AI, because someone who doesn't learn AI, they're the one who is going to lose their job, and then you'll be able to take it because you understand AI.
The term I've heard, and I forget what the other one was, but the term I've heard is being a centaur, being part human, part more than human. And in working back and forth, you're able to produce something more cohesive sometimes, or at least with less overhead. And not look, not everything is going to be an Oscar award winning film and, an Emmy award winning piece, an Eddie Award. This is the balance. Um, with that, I'm going to pick our last one for this sort of Ask a Pro thread. And it's going to be, and I think this one's always a fun sort of concept when I reach people, when I talk to people based on age. You mentioned an age item before. Yogurt Closet Happy 261 asks, "How do you guys work for more than 8 hours a day? I'm mentally checked out by the seventh hour. I'm new from the first month. It's not uncommon to push more than 8 hours a day. I used to work more regular 9 to 5, up to 12 hours, a few days a week, burning myself out. I had to take a break for almost a year. I'd like to avoid that." Um, it doesn't make a difference what the deliverables in the industry are. I work, Michael, you work with people, clients out there who go, "Oh, that last week we're working 10, 12, 14, 15-hour days because our delivery is a hard delivery, and if we don't make it, we don't get paid. Bad things happen. I get that and respect that. Human beings start to wane in their concentration around hour 6. You have to take breaks. You have to give yourself space. You have to live life. And then speaking as a father, not that this is exclusive to parenting, but speaking as a father, I know that if I work late tonight, I am going to be I'm robbing tomorrow. I'm robbing tomorrow of myself as a human, as a father, and it makes me shorter. It makes me less focused. And so, yeah, I burnt the time today, but it came out of tomorrow's pocket because it's not sustainable at the end of the day. It's not sustainable. The hard part is how do you push back with a client or a producer and go, guys, I need more time to breathe, especially when it's a client going, does that mean you're gonna charge me more money? Does that mean I'm not getting it? Like, those are the pain points. So my answer to this person is set strict limits, set strict items, and go, if you're going to ask me to work 10 hours, I need to be able to have some other space because life outside, could be a family member. I try to blame stuff that they can't be critical of because there is a certain sort of mindset that goes, if you're not willing to commit, well, I don't want you to work for me. Unless you're working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, and living under your desk, you're not working hard. Invariably by somebody who's never done that.
If if that is what you'd like to do at that point in your life, I get it. I relate. Earlier in my career, I used to have a rule that, I wouldn't go to bed with any unread emails. Like, everything had to be done, so I could go to bed with a clean conscience. I also had to tackle with extreme procrastination, where I wouldn't start working on it until,
5 PM.
until you really had to work on it, and, it just took time. It took time for me to get older and realize that, I need to disconnect a few hours before bed, or I'm gonna be staring at the ceiling. I'd like to spend time with my partner or my dog before I go to bed. And that was kind of an age thing, and I think when I was young, that wasn't an issue. When I was younger, that was not an issue. So I completely, empathize, I completely get it, but listen to your body when you have been doing this for a few years. Listen to your body. Don't be afraid to take a break. Don't be afraid to eat something. Refill your thermos, your mug, and get something to drink, and just do what you can, to stay a little bit more, mindful of what you're putting your body through during these marathon sessions.
It it's unhealthy. It's unhealthy mentally, it's unhealthy physically, without some level of compensatory, rebound over time.
Just to close on that, so, for some folks who don't know, if you are in the film and television industry, there's a different set of standards. There are different expectations for work hours, weekend work, over 8 hours. That has been a massive, faux pas in our industry, at least for me, that folks who are in post-production aren't afforded the same, time off, kind of work-life balance liberties that other industries have. So I'm, of course, speaking outside of that because I can't fight City Hall. But when it comes to other industries outside M&E, there's more protections for you taking care of yourself than there may be in kind of the unionized post-production world.
Totally agreed. Totally agreed. Um, okay, so that was our Ask a Pro thread. I wanna go ahead here. I wanna take us over to, a couple we're really doing one short take here because I feel like that Ask a Pro thread was a big one. I think this is critical. It kind of feeds into some of the stuff we were just talking about. Media Composer 2024-12 finally native for Apple Silicon. Yay, yeah, if we could have, like, sprinkles here. Um, there was criticism of first, there was a bunch of people that are happy. There are a bunch of people who are criticism, "Why did it take Avid this long?" Um, and one of the
Squash
most
the
important
bugs.
yeah, quashing bugs, rewriting code that's older than some of the people coding it. Um, course, Titleer Plus is, the big one that
It's
took
not
the lion's
it's
share.
not.
I
But
can't resist. Yeah.
as of late last year, we were expecting I suppose I can talk about it now. We were expecting this to come out last year, and that's why it's called 2024.12, right? December of last year. We were expecting it last year. I have, either monthly or biweekly phone calls, with the Avid engineering team, and we get updates on, Nexus and Media Composer and Pro Tools and all those things. And this was supposed to come out several months ago, but they wanted to get it right because there'd been so much buildup for it. But it is now out and it runs on Sequoia, which is so all of you bleeding edge folks who have the M4 systems and want to run the latest and greatest. Sequoia is supported as well as Sonoma and Ventura. But the thing I do want to temper that with is if you are utilizing Nexus, if you are utilizing shared storage, the Nexus client is not functional on Sequoia. So don't update yet. Talk with your system admin if you have a Nexus. Make sure you have the version of Media Composer that is compatible with your OS and then version of Nexus.
The big item I will come back and point out is this thread is full of chock good advice, and a laser point of what goes on. All right. So with that, I'm going to move us to our deeper topics. And we've really got two deeper topics, and the second one's a little serious. So I wanted to make sure we covered one, Michael, that was definitely less serious. So our first one, which is certainly less serious, my client is a bar. And this is by THX1138 underscore 4EB. Nice Lucas reference right there. I don't know the 4EB. Do you know the 4EB? I have no idea what that is. I'm hoping they'll
No.
they'll chime in at some point. But my client is a bar, but my agency did not shoot any drinks from said bar. They legit went out, did a production for a group. I've been in the field 20 plus years. Where do you buy Quaaludes? We'll come back to that. Not that I know where to buy Quaaludes, but it's that idea that they were so focused on the performance that they forgot to show the rest of it. And there's some great pieces in this thread. Before I go down this, do you have any stories like this you want to share or Quaalude sources?
I don't have any Quaalude sources. I've never encountered something like this because traditionally, if I'm working with a client and there's money involved, there's been some pre-pro, right? There's been well, we think we want the video to do this, and that would require these types of shots, all the way to folks who have, done the index cards and done it shot for shot, have already have a storyboard going. So the fact that none of that was in a shot list, like to be accomplished, worries me.
It worries me as well. And thankfully, like let's be honest, it would not be terrifically difficult to spend a half day or a quarter day of just like mix up 5 drinks, 10 drinks before we get there. We'll set up a quick lighting setup, and all we wanna do is see 10 people enjoy it of different, everythings. So we have something to cut from. Yeah, I'm a little, it's a little bizarre, but I wanna call some fun stuff out from this thread. Uh, Autosave me from myself says, "You should go to said bar and get your own shots." The and you can see my item here, Bob Zellin, fantastic but crotchety. Hi, Bob. Uh, I'm a patron of that bar, he says. Down here, we've got
I
deleted.
think we have a picture of you and him in that bar, don't we?
Somewhere I'm sure have had, I don't know if we're gonna dig it up. Um, Somebody who deleted has got this great meme piece of VFX guys right now. Irod Hubbard, this is the best post I've seen here in years. Uh, Adrian G13 has got the great, Kermit meme going on. Moonbounce Captain, can they do reshoots? Can they use stock footage? Here's film supply. Super Meg Giga Uber. We can fix that in post, right? I did, but late Apexer, I did a restaurant review show where we weren't allowed to show the host eating, yet the final segment was always eating the meal that they prepared in the kitchen. Man, uh, this has got such truism, such realism, such This is like, wouldn't you like to do a reality show just around this shoot and that moment in post? They're like, okay, so what are we going to cut to?
I think a reality show on a clueless agency would be fantastic, right? Different client every week. Uh, I think my first take on this would be, do a quick perusal of stock sites and then see what stock site can I has green screen with drinks on it where I could chroma key it and then somehow put the bar and and the neon sign of the bar or whatever in the background and defocus it or something like that just to
Just in
sell.
case you wanted to
This
change the background.
you're no, you do remember, you probably saw behind the scenes of Terminator 2, right? And they had to sell the shot they were being chased by a truck, right? A semi. It had, Arnie and Edward Furlong on a motorcycle, and they had to sell the fact they were being chased by a truck, and that would violate a couple rules there, union rules. So what they did is they had rear projection, but it was only for a second, right? That one shot sold the entire illusion. So something like that where you spent a lot of time crafting, a chroma key and a bar, in the background and just kind of cobble together something to sell that illusion, I think would help quite a bit rather than needing 20 shots to sell the shot.
I I agree. I have a saying, a dollar saved in pre-production saves 100 or more in post. And right here, Mammy Rammer 6682. I worked on a dock, famous bartender. They filmed the bartender making 1,000 drinks and they didn't film a single shot of the customers drinking any of it. And they had to do, but it's this line here, maybe editors should be hired during pre-production, paid, of course, to curate a shot list of basic necessities. One of those like golden pieces of advice when I get brought in as a consultant to a group is nearly always to have a member of the post department in the final pre-production meetings, the walkthroughs of like what's going to be on, because I once saved a group from having to rent a 35 millimeter camera for like an extra day. They were going to do a time lapse of bread baking. And they literally their plan, Michael, was to place the camera, get the lighting right, measure how far to open the door, and a minute close it, a minute later, open the door for an entire day because they had to do multiple takes. And at the time, I showed them because it was the early days of morphing, I showed them I could morph it. And I had this perfect baking bread. Footnote, by the way, I said to them, "First, what we should do is have the finished bread in there, take it out, and then put in the dough because the dough's gonna stick." And they're like, "Oh, that's a good idea." I saved them a day of 35 millimeter rental, plus film development, plus, all because I was in the room for this little
Mhm.
piece of the meeting. And I'm working with a group right now where I have a Monday morning meeting where I just go, "Hey, just tell me what's coming up." And we just have discretion. It is such a
You were a big fan of Ted Lasso, right?
I'm a huge fan of Ted Lasso. I don't have my belief cup up here. Absolutely.
That's actually what I was gonna talk about. You know, there's the belief sign, and you see that right before you head out, to the pitch, right? I like shoot for post. Those 3 words, and have that on a piece of tape in the production area or where your car keys are or whatever. So whenever you're picking your shots, shoot for post. Yes, this could be used for coverage in post. This could be used for a cutaway. This could be used on this rough dialogue we've sketched out. You know, and this sounds business as hell, but if you're a big Covey fan and the 7 Habits of a Highly Effective Person, it's begin with the end in mind, right? And that plays right into shoot for post. So put that on masking tape, put it on painter's tape, stick it somewhere where your production crew will see, so they know that when they're picking their shots, this has to be used by somebody else, so shoot for post.
Yeah. It's such a breathtaking look. These weren't inexperienced people. You know, he's got 20 plus years, or this person's got 20 plus years of post knowledge, and this mistake gets made. Stuff like this happens. And there's just a certain amount of line that fix it in post can do and fix it in post can't. Um, yeah, it's such a
By the way
yeah.
by the way, complete tangent. I was looking for some T-shirts. I'm going to NAB in a month. And trust me, this ties in. And if you go to Redbubble, right? Redbubble is one of those clearinghouses that has just tens of thousands of designs, and you pick what shirt you want on, they print it. I decided to look up video editing and go to Redbubble, look up video editing, and the amount of fix it in pre, don't fix it in post, I will not fix it in post, Avid sucks, Adobe sucks, Apple sucks. You should just go and type in video editing t-shirts and just see the amount of shirts. And then if you see me at NAB, show me that shirt. Yes.
Edit,
I hate Avid. There's Edit.
JKLIO, eat,
64.
sleep, eats, edit, edit, repeat. I hate Avid. H264. Let's see. Uh, I'm not taking a break. I'm rendering. I'm no hero. I'm just the editor. Fix it on set. That's oh, Michael.
There are
My gym
hundreds,
is lit.
there's 600 plus designs on there. My jaw kind of dropped when I saw the amount of options on there, but you can find something pretty interesting on there.
I got to figure out a way to get like if there's an affiliate code for Redbubble. I got to figure out how to get it in here. Um, yeah, that is a phenomenal. I had no idea this existed. No, none idea. I mean, like I could spend an hour looking through these shirts. That it's
My
amazing.
favorite is a black t-shirt, and it just has the different tweens on it, the different like keyframes. So it's got the square keyframe, it's got the triangle one, it's got the different shapes all the way down the middle. And I thought that looked pretty cool.
That's just amazing. You know, one of the few ones in here that's not black or white is chroma key me. Yeah, and you know, at
You know
NAB
what?
every year,
That
you
could be a contest for our editors. It could be like once a week, you have someone that could be chroma keyed. Remember, when the Queen, prior to her passing, obviously, wore a green outfit, and it was like everyone keyed it, and it became a meme. Maybe once a week or once a month, you present one of those, and the funniest person or funniest key wins something, or gets to be on the podcast or something.
I think it's a great idea. I think we should search out for this for
They get
NAB.
to share their reel. They
Yeah.
get to share their reel, 'cause that's something we don't do a lot in our editors, because it would be a lot of folks looking for work,
Do
rightfully so, but
I don't know if
yeah,
you know this. We do twice a month, once every other week, we do a reel review where people can post their reels. And one of the rules is if you post your reel, you got to review at least one other person's reel. So it forces community involvement. And then the other one is I forget what the alliteration. It's like show Sunday or something like that. Show your work. And
okay.
it's twice a month. You can just show something you're proud of working on. Because typically we would get on editors, we get this a lot. We used to get this a lot on video editing. We would get people just posting their stuff, like, subscribe, save, look at my YouTube, tell me how great my work is. I'm not really posting it because I'm ever coming back here. I'm doing,
Right,
and I used to call this drive-by posting.
right.
These two threads are basically under the idea that the Show Your Work Sunday probably is a drive-by posting one if you wanted it. But the other one is like, this is a great place for reels. And if, by the way, those reel reviews, they become great inspiration. They
Mhm.
become like, I'm trying to build my reel. Like, here's a list of a whole bunch of actual reels that are out there. Yeah. I love the idea of shirt-based. Maybe it is show your reel. Maybe we put it at the end of an episode if somebody wins. Uh, we'll have to see if we can get enough people to actually watch this podcast for it to have value like that. But I'm all for it. I'm all for it. Okay, everybody, take a deep breath. Michael, take a deep breath.
Mm.
I'm going to take a deep breath. Okay, so um, to get to more serious matters, the industry has been under siege and tumult and change since like COVID. It's been like 5+ years of some people feasting and some people famining. And one of the biggest changes happened this past week, which is the mill and Technicolor um, just axed everybody. And this is VFX people. This is predominantly that, but they're across the board. They've ceased operations. Uh, you know, and this, by the way, was submitted by Bob Zellen. Ben Stiffy in the early 2010s, it looked like the mill was going to take over the world. Dr. Taddy Waffles, man, when I was back in college watching video Copilot tutorials, it was my dream to work at the mill. Uh, Head of
Hey, Joe,
Flang. Yeah,
maybe we should set some context for folks who
sure.
aren't familiar with Technicolor. Technicolor is kind of a almost like a rite of passage. Working at Technicolor was considered a good position, and you were working for an industry stalwart. You were working for a company that had been around for 100 plus years, had done countless revolutionary things in terms of post-production. But 5 years, even longer than that, the company had been going through some financial strafe. And anyone who follows the VFX community knows that for a long time, being not unionized has, let me rephrase that because it's not just because of not unionizing. There hasn't been as much regulation. And so work for VFX has been really tough as it's been commoditized and moved to other areas around the globe where it can be done for less than living wage here in the US. So Technicolor several years ago sold their post-production portion of the business to Streamland Media. And that was kind of like a not a white flag, but a stuff's gonna happen, right? And then last week, there was an email that went out internally at Technicolor that said, "We, unless we secure more investments, will most likely be shuttering our doors." And that obviously has ramifications both here in the US, in France, because the laws are a little bit different in France in terms of, heads up on layoffs and such, as well as people who are contracted elsewhere. I think the last number I heard was something like 10,000 people were still under the Technicolor banner, whether that was working for the mill or MPC or Micros. There was a lot of different business organizational units, and all of them have been affected. The silver lining is that the mill, the legendary mill, some folks from the mill have been picked up and formed a new organization called Art Creative, along with folks from I'm drawing a blank. Dream Machine. I keep calling it Dream Theater. With Dream Machine to start this new art creative venture. But there's a lot of talented people who have years, decades of experience that no longer really have somewhere to go in an industry that's already hurting. So it's been a big blow for folks here in LA regarding this over the past week or so.
Over on our VFX, this is where I found out about it. It was really, really interesting. On one of those rare times, you had texted me like midway through the day and said like, "Oh, did you hear about this?" I'm like, I heard about that yesterday, man, from Reddit." VFX, because VFX is really under siege as an industry, as you said. Um, I think Indie Cutter, though, has this really nice little moment here to add another perspective. The industry's hurting, but the mill suffered from growing way too big and losing boutique level creativity. And just down from that, Matt 3D, Mike's small shop in Chicago had a pivot when the mill and method arrived. Both they undercut our rates and we were driven out of advertising VFX. So I think this is, a story beyond just globalization, a story beyond, tools are getting more inexpensive. A lot of it was talent. A lot of it might have been like I have no idea. I'm not steering that ship. I can just look at it from that outsider. And then, as you've mentioned here, and Leon Dion mentions it here, Technicolor is folding worldwide. Ambustion says, I'm going to check in with some people. I doubt it'll have the same effect. And then in Canada, it was bought by Streamland, minus any IP. Streamland Media bought Technicolor's entire post division, rolled it into their daughter's company, Picture Shop, Formosa, and goes to VFX. So, there's definitely a lot of pain here. And some of it is, sort of some of that canary in the coal mine because there was a lot of, what was it? Stay alive until 25. And now we're here in 25 and it's, people are wondering how much this goes on. There is other connection here into the thread about more discussion over filmmakers, the variety items, how it's going to affect London. This brings us to the next big thread because, we're essentially gonna go through a story here. Um, the second
I
part
do
of
wanna
that.
recommend,
Yeah,
before we
go
move
ahead.
on to the next one, is that if you're still looking for some insight into the industry, this film's a little bit dated, but, it's still relevant today, and that's a movie that came out, I think, 4 or 5 years ago called Life After Pi, and it was about the, was it I don't think it was ILM, I'm drawing a blank, but, it was about the VFX houses that worked on Life of Pi who won an Oscar, and while the Oscar was being accepted, they were declaring bankruptcy. And it went over how the VFX facilities were underbidding just to get some money coming in, because some money is better than nothing at all. And it shows you just the decline that you can have these fantastic, wonderful artisans who make, fantastic art, but at the end of the day, it comes down to cost, and if it's being done cheaper, it doesn't matter how good you are.
That was one of the red flags I learned early in a career. I worked for a group that was struggling, and they were taking incoming work to make sure they made payroll, and that was kind of
Rhythm
that
and
my
Hues. Sorry.
yeah, it's
Rhythm and
okay.
Hues, my bad.
That was my sign though to, like, go and make sure my resume was up to date and stuff because I knew they were gonna do, and they did. I left and they had afterwards like, "Oh, we need everybody to skip a paycheck, otherwise we're not in business." I mean, just awful, awful stuff to go through, and right now, it's very difficult, and with that, I think that Suitable Goose here is talking about the end of Hollywood Post, a eulogy from an editor on the way out. I'm cutting a show for one of the major streamers. I've been making the rounds, calling old executive producers. It's all the same. Netflix is the only real buyer left. Production companies are chasing tax incentives. I bet that Local 700 lost 10% of its membership last year. It's what happened to Detroit. I don't take any joy in writing it. The most surreal part of these calls, nobody watches TV anymore, even the people that make it. We're watching YouTube. Public access TV that we used to look at just took down the crown jewel of Los Angeles, Hollywood. I don't know, maybe I'll pick up odd jobs, maybe we'll figure out something else. Take care of yourselves, which, is one of the hardest items in general. This idea that we don't know what's next. I don't know the awareness of the downturn outside, but it's the same situations in the UK. 50% of freelancers have been unemployed for over a year in the UK. Um, I'm in New York, it's pretty bad. I'm still local 700. I don't know if I'm gonna have enough hours. Uh, the thing I don't get from are you guys are you guys a team? The thing I don't get is I see announcements for new shows coming out all the time and not just Netflix. Somebody is still working on these shows. Roy of Khan, can you shift into non-TV stuff? I'm making a living doing the ugly corporate crap that no one likes to do. Um, Paycheck's a paycheck. You feed your family first is always the rule. This we see a thread like this about once a week or so. Because if things are going really well, Michael, you tend not to be hanging out on Reddit, and you certainly aren't doom scrolling on Reddit, looking at things that are rough in your industry. If things are going well, you're with your family, you're doing work. It, and then and then just from speaking from a community garden point of view, which is a lot of how I see editors, you have too many of those threads, it just bums people out. And I don't there isn't a good solution. Just like there's not a magic fix it glue.
The
And
the
you go ahead.
the things I wanna add to this are, first, in the last 10 minutes or so, we haven't said anything about AI, and that's because AI has absolutely 0 to do with any of this. Folks are blaming it on AI. AI isn't good enough. Have VFX people used AI? Yeah, rotoscoping, things like that, but AI is not at a point where it's taking these people's jobs. AI didn't put Technicolor or the rest of Hollywood out of business. Let's just make sure that that is out there and that's not a scapegoat. Second, at HPA, some of the data we looked into showed that YouTube is the most streamed platform on televisions. I'm not just talking about people watching on their phone. I'm talking about on television. It dwarfs Netflix. It dwarfs any of the terrestrial providers who have pivoted to VOD content like Paramount, etc. So you can see where the kind of platform is where all this media is. And you're right, people aren't watching TV, they're watching YouTube. And that obviously influences a lot of the budgets that go to these programs.
hold that thought for a sec, because Stingray 88 says the most surreal part, nobody watches TV. We're all watching YouTube. And they say, this doesn't match my experience. I'm 37. Everybody I know is still watching plenty of TV, ton of great TV. YouTube's all right, but I don't watch much of it. To respond to the rest of your post, Hollywood isn't dead. It just went remote. I said this years ago when everybody was excited about remote startups. And I'll mention in here that you very much had a lot of vision in some of the work you've been doing in your career, that you were seeing some of the remote possibilities maybe before a lot of us did. Um, but the biggest negative here that they point out is you're now going to be competing with everyone for work. Hollywood as a business will be fine. Hollywood in the city of LA will never be the same, unfortunately. There's the Penguin. There's Severance. I mean, there's a lot of great TV that's not user generated content, which is what a lot of YouTube is. Uh, I have not seen, and maybe it's again the keyhole I look through. I've not seen many people going to YouTube for like episodic storytelling from week to week to week that has narrative threads throughout, say, a season. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It just means
Well,
more pop. Yeah, go ahead.
the counterpoint to that is appointment watching is something that the current popular demographic, was never a part of, right? Appointment viewing was, my generation and the 2 generations before it.
You're
Like
talking
so, like
you're talking, by the way, the high point of television in some ways, maybe the apex, which was like Friends, these shows that like if you missed it on Thursday, there was no way to see it. There was probably like right at the beginning of TiVo and the like, and
yeah, you had
right,
TiVo.
right. Dude, TiVo, like I still have a box in my basement, just like that Mac Plus that's sitting behind you over your right shoulder. I have a TiVo in the basement, and it becomes like any PVR. I ended up with a ton of stuff recorded that I never watched. Yeah, I think, the concept of binging is out of Netflix, that appointment TV is dead, but there's definitely this consumable of storytelling that is not user-generated content, which is still phenomenal, but has this very much narrative thread. I mean, you look at some of these shows, like I'm dying to sit back and start watching Severance because what I hear about it's so amazing. Like Ted Lasso, I caught into late, and it touched my heart in a way like stuff I don't I can't think of another show like that. So I think that this is sort of the picture of an industry under change, and frankly, all industries are constantly under change. It is naive of us to think our farming doesn't change. Our retail shopping hasn't radically changed. Um, all of these industries, and there was definitely this picture in our heads of like, oh, I wish it was like it was then, and that just it never was that great then either. You just don't today remember the pain points.
Well, listen, Hollywood has always been risk averse, right? We've built our workflows, we've built our pipelines, and we don't want to change. As Michael Cioni pointed out in a great talk he had at HPA, some of the things he brought up were things like gatekeeping, and not in the current social climate gatekeeping, but we've always here in Hollywood and in New York, film and television, there's always been this. Well, a camera costs this much, lens costs this much, people cost this much, and now that folks are flocking to other platforms, they're consuming content at a greater rate with lesser production value or with less expensive tools than they are with more expensive tools and more expensive people. So the kind of angle here is the film and television industry needs to uh, open that gate and start realizing you don't need to have the most expensive toys, and that the user generated content is part of the media and entertainment vertical. It's not film and television and then whatever everything else is. That the user generated content has to be adopted into what we do, and then there has to be a give and take. There has to be a Mr. Beast or whoever. You make great content, but we do things a little bit differently, and here are the reasons why, right? It isn't this is better, it's this is more sane. This costs less, this is more methodical, and there has to be give and take, and right now there's the kind of generational rift, which is, younger folks don't wanna do this the way their parents did, but the parents saying, "Well, there's a reason we did that." So there has to be a kind of meld give of those 2 things, so the user-generated content, the creative community can be part of film and television, that industry, the M&E industry, so we can all move forward. Otherwise, it's just gonna Hollywood is just gonna continue to go down the wrong path.
It's it's this is problem levels in the industry in general. Um, I think it's really interesting here that is ink a lot. I read this exact letter in 2001 and 2007. It's part of the gig, always has been. Hollywood isn't going anywhere. And there's some great discussion underneath this. This time it's different as a cliche, but this time it's very, very different. Um, yeah. Every time I've ever gone to invest money, there was always that line about just because our thing performed well doesn't mean it's going to perform well in the future. You know, this these types of creative careers, these types of jobs don't have direct linear paths. They don't have you could be in fact, I just had a talk with a friend with somebody um, who's a friend who went to USC, that one of the reasons that I never got into screenwriting was I couldn't figure out how to know if I was decent, how to make a profit. And the worst part was I might be screenwriting for 5 years or 8 years to realize I wasn't that great of a writer. And the idea that there's a lack of that sort of path makes things difficult amongst all the other stresses in society. And so, with that, I want to move us to this. Does anyone know who's made a successful and lucrative pivot out of the industry? And this is from a nauticals, nautical sandwich. I almost said nautical sandwich, nautical sandwich. And I think that this concept here of pivoting, I think to some degree, you should always be keeping an eye and having a multiple level of skill set. Scott Simmons and I do a talk at NAB. We're doing it again this year. It's a great talk of skills I wish I had learned, early in my career. And generally, it's almost always going to be like motion graphics, business skills, those sort of things that are super crazy useful. Uh, Reddit burner 5525. I have no other skills. I don't know what to do. I started making content. It's a slow process. Uh, I know someone that opened a wine bar, another person that became a post soup for a digital media company, another went back and got her MSW and is now a therapist. All these folks that seem to be happy from OTK cryptographer. I teach at a university, Das Goose. I know someone who switched to carpentry. Uh, I'm not gonna try and pronounce that. Pivoted into tech marketing. My friend joined the electrical union. She's 35, 0 experience, 5 years. She'll be making more than I am. This thread is a great example of other possibilities and opportunities that exist. And just as equally, I know people who are doubling down and going, if the field is going to have someone eating out, I want to be the person who is doubling down, sure that they're going to, their work is going to be seen because there'll be less direct competition. Because as much as remote is amazing, and remote is amazing, still, you mentioned we've talked about NAB and pressing the flesh. It's a lot easier to trust somebody that you know and can spend some time in town. You're much more unlikely to give that large budget to somebody on Fiverr that you've never met and who knows if they ever ghost you.
I, uh I don't like saying I don't know, but I don't know how to answer this. I've been enamored with this industry, for decades, and it wasn't just because the stature of or perceived importance of I'm working on a film or working on television. It was because I very much enjoyed the logic underneath the creativity, how things worked for the creative. And The only I would almost twist this to say, you can pivot inside the industry. You mentioned, a few folks, who had commented on the thread about becoming a post super or a manager, right? Management experience, can translate to different industries, whereas being an editor, not so much. So management, yes, there is an immense market out there for, uh, YouTubers, who are moving up from kind of base level creation tools to saying, how do I get time code when I shoot? Because I want to do multicam, right? How do I optimize my editing so it runs so my editing, the time it takes to edit is quicker, right? There are different things you can do in the industry around the industry that aren't directly tied to being in the chair. And I think that all just goes to your proclivities at that point. But just in my opinion, if you are afraid of losing your job of being in the chair, there are other areas in and around the industry that don't involve being in the chair, but understanding what it takes to be in the chair. So then you can consult, advise, and manage on that type of scenario.
This is, the struggle that there is no great answer. What's my next step forward in life? And with that, I think it brings us to this really nice thread from Agent 42B. And I'm just going to footnote in here. For a long time, Agent 42B was the lead mod who was becoming inactive because life had moved on. I'm now the lead mod, and I was even the lead mod then. To be honest, Michael, I was doing the bulk of the lifting and then some. I kind of noticed that I would change the rules and nobody gave a crap. Ask
Mhm.
what is it? Ask for forgiveness. Right? It's easier to ask to
Right.
apologize than ask permission. Um, Agent 42B says, I'm a former TV editor. I'm now a C suite in IT. Ask me anything about career pivots. Talks about their milestones, skills that enabled my pivot. And I think that first one, adaptability to change, interview excellent, career progression after TV, all of it post what I'll call post pandemic, but final year of the MBA kind of for their MBA, it's kind of right at that edge. Their MBA had started before the pandemic had started. Why I left, um, and there's a lot of items in here. It's a great AMA to read. You mentioned about certifications. Congrats. Um, did you find any ageism? Uh, what kind of role do you think best translates to the business world? Are you an artistic editor? What brought you more joy? Instead of us going through this part of the thread, I think it's really valuable for people to come and visit these four threads. The mill being about a large, a Walmart level group, although super talented, but a group kind of growing in confluence of items, causing them to disappear rapidly. The idea of Hollywood is changing. Is it at an end or not? Somebody looking for a pivot and then somebody with a very successful pivot. I think these four threads are really just a great holistic group of sort of where a snapshot of the industry. And I don't mean a snapshot from some an analyst making a guess about where the industry is. This is a I'm on the ground and reading Reddit, which makes it a very smart certain group. I would say smart group, but certain group. But I think it's a real interesting barometer of where things are. And it's again what I come to Reddit for is that idea that it's a magnifier of an industry outside of my office. And if I don't get out of the office this week, if I'm not reading, you know, one website or another, I'm suddenly able to see that magnification because of Reddit. It's what makes it powerful. Um, I'm getting ready to wrap and kind of move this to the next topic, but I wanted to make sure you had some last words about this pivot, about this AMA.
In every downturn in an industry, there's always somebody who makes money, right? And I think there's a way to do that without it being on the backs of people who have been wronged. So I'm not saying I know what the answer is to make money at this point, but in every single economic downturn or industry downturn, someone's made money in one way or another. So I would challenge anyone out there who's looking to leave, what can my expertise in this industry help make people money, so I can stay in this industry?
All right. Typically at this spot, we go to a dopamine hit, especially, as I said, very serious at the front, had a nice little progression, trying to have a positive note. You and I have a lot of discussions around AI. And, somebody must have used utilitarian AI. You used analytical AI. Again, pumping up an AB, I'm doing a talk on practical applications of AI, just things that are actually working. And I think this one here, this because you had suggested one of these tools, I suggested another. They provided this really nice sort of dopamine hit. Probably the biggest struggle with the volume of content people see is the level of analysis of being able to do it. And, somebody goes and says, well, we just rolled in with 40 hours of footage. Can you start showing me edits tomorrow? And you go, wait a second, I got to watch 40 hours of footage. So I'll talk to you next week. And, for 30 seconds of good nuggets, and yes, 1,000%, that's part of what great editorial is somebody going, "Ooh, I noticed that this lined up with this in such a way, and it was just a beautiful moment." 1,000%. But we're beginning to see some of these vision-based analysis tools come to the market, and I'm gonna hit 4 different items, and we'll do brief talks, not necessarily. And in full disclosure, Michael and I have seen these products, played with these products. We are professionally living at this moment without a bias in them. And while you could engage us and talk to us directly, if we go, oh, we think this right now, here at Reddit, here at Star Wipes, we're just going to be neutral about the tools we're looking at today. I think that's pretty fair.
And yes, and these tools, none of us are financially compensated for. So if
Correct.
we say they're great, we're not getting paid under the table. We're not getting free licenses. It's just through our experience, we feel this may be a good tool to look into.
Okay, so with that, I'm going to start with the first one that hit my radar. Is it the first one? Sure. And it's Jumper. And Jumper is an AI vision search all on your device. It's got a lot of nice features. I am using it right now. I find it very, very powerful. You throw a lot of footage at it, and it starts to be able to search on that footage, and it can search also through the transcripts, which it's got to do its own analysis for. It has this really cool ability that you can say, "Oh, I want something that looks like this," or I can copy something off of YouTube, or not YouTube, copy an image and say, "Find stuff that looks like this." Um, it's pretty amazing, and part of that amazing is that it works in Final Cut, in Premiere Pro, in Resolve, in Media Composer, and it works like that today. And I found out about it first on Reddit.
It's a great tool. What I like about it, I haven't seen it in all of the NLEs. I know they're working on it, but at least in Adobe, what I like about it is, you can use it in older versions of Adobe. We'll talk in a little bit about Adobe's new kind of media intelligence feature, but that's in beta on beta versions of software, whereas Jumper can be used on older versions. And what I also like quite a bit, to reiterate your point, Jeff, it's all local, which for a lot of people is a must. We don't want this going to the cloud either for security or because we don't want to pay for it. So doing it locally is fantastic.
It's a deal breaker for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Um, and that and this one, I just showed up on my radar in the last 30 to 60 days is Quicture, which is AI editing for the pros, which does an analysis. And, I can only guess from what's in here, although I'm going to be talking to them, story beats revealed, instant summaries, auto rough cuts. Have you seen much of this?
Yeah, I've used it, and, in the interest of total transparency, my day job with Keycode Media has been engaged with them on a business level. So when the product is available for sale, it's something that Keycode Media will be able to handle. But my analysis of this and usage of it was prior to that. So right now, the tool will do what we used to call radio edit, right? You may call it an assembly edit, which is it analyzes the audio in your video files. It creates a transcript via its own cloud server. You then have a prompt within your NLE at this point, Adobe or Avid, and you tell it what you want, whether you want humor, whether you want it to be 5 minutes or 10 minutes. It'll give you ratings on how spicy it is, or how personal or how emotional it is, and it will give you the story beats, and you can rearrange them. You can ask them to insert humor at a certain point, and it will do your rough cut. What I want, and we did a webinar actually on this last week, where we talked about how to integrate this with your creative team, and how to get it, how to work with your creatives so it works with them. What I want to stress is, as an editor, you spend an immense amount of time getting to that point where you can start to create. That's sifting, labeling, organizing. And that, yes, is a part of editing, and it helps you get familiar with the footage, but a lot of time it's just methodical, mechanical. I have to get this prepped. This technology gets you prepped. It gets you prepped to get your assembly, so now you can start creating. That's what this does. It does no more, does no less. And I want folks to realize that this tool is not generative. It's analytical or utility AI. It helps you get to that assembly quicker.
I think all of these tools are analytical. They're there to help the analysis. They're not here to go, oh, you're missing this shot, or here are some shots of my suggestions. Um, I'm going to move us to Hey Eddie, which I have a little bit more experience with. Hey Eddie uh, initially was just, and it's called original here. You handed it some interviews, and it kind of creates a string out that can drop into the NLE. And much like the other tools, some of the other tools, this one was not on-prem. This one had to go into the cloud. But it would do things like can do social media clips. Is it doing it at the same level of maybe Opus, which right now at some levels may be considered a gold standard? I don't know. I haven't played with this deeply yet. Um, it's doing rough cuts where you're giving it parts of stories, and it's a conversation, a chat GPT-esque sort of thing. It's doing logging of B-roll and A-roll, which, I think is pretty impressive about what it's doing. I've just played a little bit with it, but it's populating in fact, it's populating directly into, say, like, Resolve with a whole bunch of labeled bins and string outs based on what it's anticipating. Now, having said that, it's beta tools. I've run into some weird stuff. Uh, if we were doing this podcast totally ISO, I would have thrown it at the podcast multicam version of this. And they're talking about being able to possibly cut rushes and footage to your script. Now, how something like that works as far as multicam takes and picking the best take, I have no idea. But these sort of things are accelerators, and all of them are at market or coming to market earlier or faster. And like Jumper is usable on older versions of tools. I think it really wraps to the last one, which is in the beta right now of Premiere, which is their media intelligence and search panel. And it does a similar visual search as some of these tools do, and it's directly in Premiere. I would never recommend you using this, for your everyday driver when it's in beta. Have I seen groups use beta features on an isolated system, kick out an XML string out and give it to yes, I have. Um, there is, without any question, 4 or 5 weeks from now, this is going to be one of the things that everybody is talking about at NAB is how these tools and trying to figure out which one fits your group the best.
I want everyone who checks out these tools and will invariably or inevitably be part of the deluge of AI info coming out of NAB. Um, just keep in mind, all of these tools are inside the creative editing software, because they're meant to facilitate the editor being more creative. It's meant to accelerate the things that are boring in your job so you can create. That's what these tools are for. And I recommend that any of the hype people that are talking about AI tools, that you take a very good look at their pedigree and take a very good look at what they have to gain by pushing an AI tool, so you can kind of ensure that when they make recommendations, it's in your best interest, it's in the best interest of someone who's in the chair and not someone who's looking just to make money off it. So don't believe the hype.
Agreed. And with all these tools, we recommend you test it on a real project, break it. None of, remember, and this is one of my maxims in life, nothing ever works as well as the demo material does. And the demo material was picked to be demo material because they invariably, every company wants you to think, oh my God, how can I live without that product? Look what it's going to do for me. That's at least what good demo material should be. Um, we're well over the hour. We're clixing into the, at least in the raw recording, towards 90 minutes here, my friend. Um, we're gonna wrap here. We've seen across the board some of our Ask a Pro. We've seen a little bit of our shortcuts and long form answers, and we've kind of meshed them together because there's so much that's happened industry wide and so much that is happening. We're both going to be at NAB, and we'll probably have at least one more recording, hopefully, that gets out before NAB. But before we do, Michael Kammes, AV Guru One, where can we find you? What's going on? What do you want to hype up here?
If you're going to NAB, I'll be teaching some classes at Post Production World on AI, 2 different classes. One will be on, creative tools utilizing analytical AI. Another one will be more for teams and facilities. So, AI technology that's mainly meant for, facilities and teams of creatives as opposed to individuals. I'll also be, at a session on Tuesday with Open Drives, and Gold Coast, Post in New York, talking about some of their tech and what they've been able to do this past year. Other than that, you can catch me at michaelkammes.com, 5thingsseries.com, or at Michael Kammes on the socials.
Uh, uh, A, I'm going to try and crash your sessions. B, I have an open drives thing to tell you right before we wrap, but I'll mention it afterwards. My name's Jeff Greenberg. I'm found at J Greenberg Consulting. I'm film geek on most of the social networks. The place I hang out the most is Reddit, and particularly our editors, where I'm the lead moderator. I'm Greeny's Mac, and I'm the guy who's most likely to reject your post or bump it into the right place. And generally, one of my rules to our mod crew, Michael, is never try not to ban people, not never ban people, try not to ban people, be compassionate. That's the first rule in the subreddit is, be civil. Remember the person, in the seat. Uh, the other thing I'll mention, and I'm sure we'll have it posted here, is we have a Discord, and we're going to try and grow the Discord more. And we'll also be trying to have a meetup at NAB for our editors and other subreddits. And with that, thank you, Michael. It's always a joy to have you here.
I've missed this, Jeff. Thanks so much for setting it up.
I miss it too, and I'm hoping to get at least one more in. Thanks for watching, and of course, I think we both have to say, Rachel, thank you so much for putting it together and making us both look at least semblance of sane human beings.
You're fantastic, Rachel. Thank you.
And thanks for watching.